There are basically two things. One is practice for his involvement in yoga. The other one is practice to discover, experiment on oneself, for him to be teaching what he taught to students. Usually he had people with some ailments all the time. People came for some remedies for their problems. So remedial kind of R&D he had to develop, which he did within himself. So there are two sets of practices, one for him to evolve his own yoga, and the other one is for him to teach, which was actually not really teaching yoga, helping them to overcome their problems, physical and mental problems. Therefore, the condition we have, which is really unfortunate, that many people claim that they were his students. All his students claim that they were his students. He wanted a condition that they should be students of yoga under him. So, because it was a popularization kind of phase, which almost consumed his whole life, except last 10 years. Otherwise, it consumed whole life. That he had to propagate, he had to convince people, he had to help people. So, it was all remedial yoga primarily. Therefore, he has often said, when I teach, I am a scientist. Actually, if you are teaching, you should be a teacher. But then he never had that opportunity. He said, when I teach, I am a scientist, because I have to evolve person to person, what are the requirements. If this person requires this chair, somebody requires a taller chair. So he had to work that way. So he had two sets of practices. One, while he is going to teach so-called yoga, he had to develop something, and one is to evolve his own practice, he evolved his own yoga. The unfortunate thing is that he could not really teach yoga, because all of them were his followers. They all claim that they were Iyengar's student. Nobody claimed that they were yoga student. And he didn't want that actually, but in his lifetime he could not get that. Only towards the end of his life, maybe last 10, 15 years, he embarked upon teaching yoga, where the students were not really prepared. So those are the two sets of practices. One for the people practicing on one's body, one is practicing on one's own body and mind for oneself, exploring yoga. Yoga is not to be practiced actually. See, it is not a subject to be practiced, it is to be exploring. It's a constant explorative process, because the body and mind is constantly changing. You will not have your same body another hour or tomorrow. So practice as such is not possible in yoga. So it is exploring, experimenting, exploring all the time, because our matter is changing moment to moment. We are different every moment. So even if you practice every day, that means every day you are changing. So there is nothing like practice, because to practice you must have an instrument which is constant. Like suppose I am practicing violin, I learn violin, I practice violin. The violin cannot go on changing, sometimes someday small, someday big, someday wide, someday narrow. Violin has to be constant. Then I can practice and perfect it. But suppose the violin is changing in size and form, how will I ever perfect the violin? A body is like the instrument, the mind is an instrument which is ever changing. So you really can't be practicing on your body and mind. It's not a non-changing instrument. It is ever-changing instrument. So there is nothing like practice. In the sense we understand repeated efforts. So that there were two kinds of practices. And the world benefited at large by his discovery of props, etc. And therefore they could be helped easily in overcoming their problems. So one practice is he practiced for others. To help others he practiced. And one is to practice for himself by himself.
And how did the evolution of props come? But how did he, figure out that props would help people?
Since he had to help people, disabled people, aged people, etc., he could not be stipulating the classical postures and actions of yoga. So therefore he thought that they should be given some assistance. For example, you are taken a sitting position now, you are given a chair, you are sitting. But you can do a take a sitting posture without anything under your seats. It will be comfortable. So if you are given a seat to rest your seats on it, then it's a comfortable seat. Otherwise, you can be standing and bending your knees and come to a sitting position. So asanas, some of the asanas, most of the asanas are difficult to be done and then to be sustained, to be maintained. So now you can sit on the chair for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours. But if I give you sitting position, you can't do more than 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So he understood that if the asanas have to work, one must be in the position. And therefore the props were developed. The other thing is that something should sustain the posture rather than you sustaining your posture. Now your chair is sustaining your sitting posture. If I remove the chair, you have to sustain your own sitting position. So something should sustain so that posture can work for remedy. With the posture, if you are sustaining your body, the posture won't be really working to decimate the effects. So that's why he developed props for yoga to work on you. If yoga doesn't work on you, how can you get remedy? For yoga to work on you, I have to give some props. So it is sustaining you in the pose, like Viparithanasana, which very arch and lie down. So that is sustaining you. If you have to do independently your arch, you will struggle sustaining, you will put all your energy in sustaining it. So yoga won't work. And if yoga doesn't work, you won't get remedy. So for yoga to work, props are important.
Outside of class, not as a teacher, but as a father or as a husband, as a grandfather, how is he different in that sense?
See, yoga basically tries to deal with your own body-mind complex. And our body-mind complex is ever-changing. And then when we become adepts in handling our own body, we are able to deal with other minds as well. Say, suppose when you get up in the morning, you are very lazy. And when you are at the end of the day, again you are very lazy, waiting to go to sleep. Having come out of sleep, you are lazy. To be going to the sleep again, you are lazy, and inertia is there. We have different states of mind during peak hours of the day. On a day when you are active for your own sake, one state of mind. You are active for somebody else, another state of mind. So we have several states of minds. So if you learn to deal with yourself, you will try to deal with other minds as well. And that's how he could deal with other minds. People of different age, different culture, different ethnicity, different background, different social, political, social, economic conditions. So also relatives, the children, the great-grandchildren, the brothers, the cousins. So actually you have all relations within you. If I put a question, how are you related to yourself? Should you not be related to yourself? You are related. How are you related? You are severally related to yourself. Sometimes you are your own boss, you are boss of your own mind. Sometimes you are subservient of your mind. Sometimes the mind rules over you, sometimes you rule over the mind. Sometimes you regulate the mind, sometimes mind regulates you. So tendencies, mind, either they are regulated or they are regulating. So we ourselves go in different relationships with ourselves. Sometimes we have positive state of mind, and then that is working on us. Sometimes we have negative state of mind, and then it is working on us. So we relate ourselves to negative state of our mind in one way, positive state of mind in another way, neutral state of mind in one way, or not particularized state of mind in another way. So you learn to deal with different mindsets by dealing with your own mind. And then you really become fit to be acquainting yourself with any other mind. So that's how Guruji had that kind of thing. So he could be moving with his friends with comfort, friends were comfortable. So also the case of students and acquaintances and relations. So yoga teaches you all the relationships that you might have in the world and much more than that. So if you put up with yourself in every condition of you, you can put up with anyone outside in the world. So that's how he developed that, by just being with himself and trying to put up with one's own conditions. assimilate certain conditions. Certain conditions have to be assimilated, certain conditions have to just put up with it. So that's how yoga works. Like your mind is one kind of mind in Shirshasana, another kind of mind in Shavasana. Or backward bending pose, forward bending pose. You encounter several mind profiles within yourself. So yoga gives you a training provided you are a student there. And that's why you can put up with any condition in life, any condition in the world, quite comfortably, and also give them comfort in your company. Because it's no good you are comfortable and they are not comfortable.
What sort of interest did Guruji have outside of yoga? Any hobbies or interests? He was interested in cricket, for example.
Yeah, he was interested in cricket, he was interested in sports, and then he was interested in all kinds of arts. He was very much interested in yoga, dance, actually classical dance. He was thinking of actually becoming a classical dancer rather than practitioner of yoga at some stage in life. And that's why he once saw Uday Shankar in a ballet, and he was so fascinated. Then he said, why not find out a way that I will teach him yoga and he will teach me dance. But it did not materialize. But he had a lot of interest in music and dance.
You yourself played an instrument?
I played music, Indian classical music, yeah.
And did you and Guruji have any interaction with regards to music when you were practicing?
He play a lot in my music.
Is there anything else you would like to add? Something from your side you would like to add?
A couple of things. Yeah. The whole world, including his own students, which are so-called students, actually they were impacted by him, influenced by him. He was a very charismatic person, very impactful person. So all his so-called students got impacted. So they all learned under him. When he openly said, I am not teaching yoga. When I am teaching, I am tackling your problems, handling your problems, and help you overcome your problems. When I practice, I am a philosopher, he said. So yoga is a philosophy. So he had three kinds of phases. One is as a performer. He was excellent performer, one without a second. So far, no one has performed like him. No one ever before performed like him. He had that knack, skill, trait. So he was a performer, performing artist in yoga. Then he was a scientist when it came to teaching the students how to handle this mind, how to handle that mind, etc. It's a science. Read the mind and understand the cause and effects, how they work, and devise their instructions for them. But when he practiced, he was a philosopher. And because yoga is a philosophy, basically. But the world has not recognized what he did within himself for yoga. Nobody has acknowledged. What he did out in the world for people, world has recognized, world has lots of accolades. Even the government of India gave him all awards because for what he did in the world, not what he did in yoga, because they could not identify that. But when I became student of yoga, I started realizing what he must have done with his own body and mind embodiment, what he is doing with his embodiment, how he is exploring yoga, understanding, comprehending and exploring yoga within himself. Not being a student, nobody can understand. How your mind works, I cannot understand by just interacting with you in such kind of conditions. Nobody can see somebody else's mind. So when he practiced, he was working on his own embodiment, got to know his mind, not only peripheral mind, but the subterranean mind, core mind, etc. Penetrated the mind through yoga. So if you decide to penetrate, you will only end at the peripheral mind, you won't go beyond. But in yoga, you are taken well beyond the peripheral mind. So his explorations were enormous. World really did not recognize. He developed certain concepts which were unique, like the 4 varnas and 4 ashramas which are in Vedic culture, how they are within oneself. Then an organ such as called organ of conscience. Everyone wants to be others to be conscientious and oneself to be conscientious. But which is the organ of conscience? Nobody has identified. How to be conscientious, nobody will tell you, but everyone will tell you be conscientious. But how to be conscientious? Where is the organ of conscience? He explored the organ of conscience within oneself. How to constitute that? It is not an organ in anatomy physiology. You won't find an organ of conscience, but it has to be constituted. Yoga constitutes it. So he understood how to constitute the organ of conscience, and then use it. If you have, it will start working. If you have conscience, the conscience will start working on its own. You don't have to evoke anything for it. So organ of conscience. The cosmic gunas which are constituting whole universe, including you and me. So how the sattva, raja, tama, three gunas work within our environment. Certain metaphysical, metapsychical explorations took place. The world would not have known it. You should be a student of yoga to understand the precepts of yoga, the precepts of philosophy of yoga and Sankhya. Like for example, Bhagavad Gita, each of the chapter at the colophon says, this is a yoga shastra. 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita are 18 chapters on yoga. If you see the colophon of the chapters, each is yoga shastra. In the yoga shastra, first chapter, second chapter, third chapter, etc. 18 chapters. So, his exploration of yoga has gone unrecognized, and in all probabilities is also not proper to understand that, what he did in yoga. But I, as a student of yoga, started understanding what he did in yoga, what was his achievement in yoga, what is it that he discovered in yoga. So there are so many things which only reflect in my teachings. When I teach yoga, those things will be reflected. So that was the great thing. As far as the remedial aspect is concerned, where the world recognized him, one thing his students also did not identify or recognize. During his lifetime, whatever 85 years he taught yoga, basically remedial yoga, he never asked anyone to bring the reports. He never asked anyone, go test and get pathological report, radiological report. If somebody came with it, he said, turn a blind eye. He said, I don't want to look at all that. He had his own subjectivistic diagnostics. He never sent anyone to doctors and get tested, see how you are improved now. You had such a problem and go and get tested. He never said anything like that. He never looked at the medical reports, never wanted any student to tell him about his problems also. He had his own scanning eyes. Before the student would say, Guruji, I have got this gastric problem or a lung problem, he would divulge it to the patient. He would say, this is your problem. Now, this is not at all understood by students, and they are all, earning their bread and butter. And now even the jam on it. By taking recourse to remedial yoga. All Iyengar teachers are teaching usually remedial yoga. But nobody understood that trait in him, and the condition that he never asked anyone to get reports. He never saw any report if somebody came with a file. He said, I don't want. I have my own diagnostics. This was a great thing that he had that faculty, and no student ever bothered how to get that faculty, rather than depend upon the pathologist and radiologist to tell us what this person is suffering from. So that was a great thing. That never in life he asked anyone, what is your problem? Even today physicians will ask you, the moment you enter their cabin, what's your problem? He never asked anyone, what is your problem? He just looked at them, and then from that he said, you have such a problem. You have thyroid problem, you have gastric problem, you have lung problem, heart problem, or physical problems that you have imbalance in the legs or malalignments or any such thing. This has gone unidentified by his students also. The world has not paid him any accolade for this scanning kind of diagnostics that he had. Not as an exception that he was. Once he asked for somebody's report and consult the doctor, what's your problem? Never.
A lot of people have said that he was a man with the X-ray eyes. Is that in relation
Yeah, he
to
has
what?
such an insight. See, if you are tensed, he won't look at your eyes, he will look at your throat and say you are tensed. Usually, somebody's mind will look at the eyes. If you say, read the mind of the person, you look at the eyes. He looked at the gestures, he looked at the throat, he looked at the shoulders. He knew that depressed people are typical kind of shoulders. Because eyes can be misleading because you can deceive a person by your eyes. But the gestures of the body, etc., they won't cheat, they won't deceive. So he would look at the shoulder and say you have got such a problem, look at the chest and say you have ego problem or depression problem, etc. Okay.
One last thing I wanted to ask was about Guruji's, I don't know if this is the correct word to use, but his legacy going forward from here on and the reach that his teachings have spread across the world. How do you feel that it's going to go forward from here?
See, in the field of yoga, in fact, there is nothing like legacy. There is a tradition, and this is subjectivistic study. One must study oneself, and therefore it will be changing from person to person. It is not a science like physical science or mathematical science. 2 plus 2 is 4. Like in life, 2 plus 2 is not necessarily 4. Sometimes it is 3, sometimes it is 10 also. So yoga really doesn't have legacy as such. The thing is that one should be a student of yoga. One has to study one's own potential. They change from person to person. So legacy as such will be there only somebody in remedial yoga. Iyengar yoga was curing diseases. So somebody can say, I will also cure diseases, etc. But the legacy as such is not there. It's a subjectivistic wisdom. Like, if you know a great sage, you will not know about his son. So what the son has become? Son can become something else. So legacy as such is not there. It's an adhyatmic subject. One must have self-inquiry. Your self-inquiry will be different than my self-inquiry. So therefore there is no standardization as such, and therefore there is no legacy as such. We should turn out students of yoga. Then that is well and good. Because that is one studying oneself, one's own body, mind. A lot will be discovered. Mind has unfathomable depth. So legacy of our legacy means those who continue to study the subject of yoga and not just follow a sect like Iyengar yoga. It is not going to last long. Sect won't last long. Because those are on something very transient things. They will not sustain too long. Yoga is eternal subject. So if we turn out students of yoga, then that's a legacy. If I turn out Prashant's students, there won't be legacy. I should turn out students of yoga.